This is my true story. I worked my whole life to provide for my family. I trusted my wife to stand beside me, and I trusted my boss to guide me. I thought both were pillars in my life. But the two people I trusted most betrayed me together. My wife gave herself to my boss, while I worked late nights believing in both of them. The pain was heavy, but I did not scream. I exposed them. Before I tell you how I ended them both, tell me where you're watching from and subscribe so my story can reach more people. I spent my life working hard to build stability for my family. I woke up early, worked long hours, and often came home too tired to even sit and enjoy the evening, but I told myself it was worth it. Every paycheck I earned went first to the house, the bills, the food on the table, and the needs of my wife. I believed she stood by me through every struggle. When money was tight, I pushed myself harder so she never had to feel the weight of sacrifice. I saw her as my partner, the one who would carry life with me, the one I could rely on. At work, I trusted my boss. He was older, experienced, and carried himself as someone who knew more about the world. I respected him as a mentor and allowed his guidance to shape how I handled my job. I thought he had my best interest in mind, the way I had his. Between my wife at home and my boss at work, I believed I had two people I could trust the most. To me, those two relationships were pillars in my life, one personal, one professional. My wife gave me a reason to work, my boss gave me direction in my work, and together, I believed they were part of the same foundation of stability. I imagined the future being simple, years of service at my job, years of devotion at home, and then peace in old age with the woman I had sacrificed for. Every decision I made was to protect what I thought we were building. I refused temptations at work. I turned down shortcuts that would have disrespected my boss, and I turned down distractions that would have disrespected my wife. I stayed loyal to both. I thought loyalty would be rewarded, that hard work and sacrifice would pay off. I believed I had built something strong and lasting, a home filled with respect and a career filled with honor. I thought my wife saw me as her protector, her provider, her partner for life. I thought my boss saw me as his reliable worker, someone he could trust like a son. I thought both of them valued me the way I valued them. That was the future I imagined. But in reality, the future I built was being mocked in secret, because the very two people I trusted the most were already tearing down everything behind my back. The changes did not happen in one day. They came slowly, in small pieces that at first seemed harmless, but over time built into a wall I could no longer ignore. My wife started paying more attention to how she looked when she left the house. Before, she dressed simple, only fixing herself up for family events or special dinners. But now she was wearing new clothes for errands, putting on makeup just to go shopping, and staying in the mirror longer than usual. I asked nothing of it because I thought maybe she wanted to feel younger, maybe she wanted confidence. I trusted her, so I pushed away the thought that it could mean something else. At the same time, I noticed my boss changing as well. He used to greet me with warmth, always praising my work, always asking about my family, always telling me I was one of his most reliable men. But suddenly, his tone shifted. The praise grew less frequent, his words sharper, yet somehow he seemed to know more about my personal life than before. He mentioned details he should not have known, small things about my home and my wife, things I never told him. I thought maybe she had spoken to him in passing at a company event, but then the comments became too specific, too familiar. It unsettled me, but again I buried my doubts. I told myself suspicion would only poison my mind, and loyalty required trust. Then the late nights began. My boss asked me to work longer, sometimes telling me a project required more hours, other times insisting I handle tasks after everyone else had gone home. I did it because I wanted to be dependable, but soon those nights seemed oddly convenient. My wife also began having excuses at the same time, visiting a friend, helping a cousin, running errands that kept her out longer than necessary. At first, I thought it was coincidence. I convinced myself it was bad timing. But when I came home to an empty house one night after hours at work, my gut told me there was something more. I dismissed it, tried to push it down, but the whisper of betrayal grew louder. She began avoiding me in small ways, sitting farther on the couch, spending more time with her phone, smiling at messages she never shared. I would walk into the room, and she would quickly put her phone down, screen turned over as if the light itself carried secrets I was not allowed to see. My boss, once professional, started acting in ways I could not explain. He seemed more relaxed when she was nearby, and sometimes at company gatherings, I caught him glancing at her longer than appropriate. I wanted to believe I was imagining it. I wanted to believe age was making me paranoid, that I was reading too much into things. But deep inside, my instincts screamed betrayal. The worst part was how they made me feel like an outsider in my own life. My wife no longer asked about my day. My boss no longer looked at me with respect. It was as if they shared something between them that left me standing alone in the dark. I remembered the days when I came home tired, and she would greet me with warmth. Now she barely looked up from her phone. I remembered the years when my boss used to say he couldn't run the place without me. Now he dismissed my effort as if it were nothing. Both of them pulled away from me, but closer to each other, even though they pretended nothing had changed. I started noticing patterns. Days when my boss asked me to stay late lined up with nights my wife had new excuses to be out. Mornings when he seemed especially cheerful were mornings when she returned home tired but smiling faintly, a smile that was not meant for me. The puzzle pieces began to fit, but I kept pushing them apart in my head because facing the truth felt too painful. How could my wife betray me after everything I gave her? How could my boss, the man I respected like family, use my trust as cover for his betrayal? The subtle shifts grew heavier, stacking on top of each other until they formed a weight I could no longer ignore. My gut screamed at me that I was being deceived, but my heart begged me not to believe it. I chose silence, convincing myself that suspicion without proof would destroy me faster than the truth. But silence did not protect me. It only gave them more space to carry on. I walked around my own home, as if it was no longer mine, sitting in my chair while she texted in secret, standing in my office while he pretended to be my mentor. I lived as if nothing had changed, but inside I knew everything had. Each shift was a cut, small on its own, but together they bled me dry. The way she laughed too much at her phone. The way he stopped respecting me at work. The way their stories lined up too perfectly when they thought I wasn't paying attention. My instincts told me betrayal was no longer just suspicion, it was reality. I buried it under loyalty, but loyalty could not protect me anymore. The foundation I thought was built on trust was cracking beneath me, and I knew that soon I would see the truth for what it was, even if it destroyed me. The signs that once felt like whispers became louder, clearer, and harder to push away. It began one night when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She was asleep, and I glanced over. At first, I told myself not to touch it, that trust was the rule of marriage. But then I saw the name. It was not a name of any family member, not one of her friends, but something odd, a fake name, one I had never heard before. The message preview showed only a few words, but they were enough to shake me. Words no married woman should receive, words that belonged to secrecy, not love. My heart pounded in my chest, and I picked up the phone. What I found tore through me. Behind the fake name was my boss's number. Every message was there, hidden in plain sight, proof that the whispers in my gut were not paranoia, but reality. He told her things no man should say to another man's wife. She responded with words that cut me, words full of affection for him, words mocking me as if I were nothing more than a fool. They joked about my long hours at work, hours I thought I was sacrificing for them. They laughed about how I never suspected, how easy it was to hide. And worse, they arranged meetings. Places where I thought she was shopping, she was meeting him. Times when I thought he was staying late at work with me, he was really planning his nights with her. The betrayal was sharp, but the knife cut deeper because it came from the two people I trusted most. My wife, the woman I gave my life to, and my boss, the man I respected as a mentor. I scrolled further, and the proof piled higher. Photos of them together, not in obvious ways, but close enough that I knew. Pictures of him meeting her car in parking lots, images she sent of herself dressed up, captioned with words that mocked me. My chest grew heavy, my stomach twisted, and I felt the air leave my lungs. I wanted to throw the phone, wanted to scream, but instead I sat still, my hands trembling as the truth settled in. For years, I had believed loyalty would keep my world steady, but in one night, I learned my world had been a lie. At work the next day, I could not look at him the same. He stood in front of me, speaking in the same calm tone he always used, but now I saw the man behind the mask. Every word felt fake. Every smile felt like an insult. He looked me in the eyes, but I could see the truth hiding behind them. I wondered how long it had been going on, how many times they had laughed together at my expense, how many nights I sat alone while they shared what they stole from me. At home, I watched her carefully. Every time she picked up her phone, every time she left the house, I felt the betrayal burn deeper. She thought her secrets were safe, but they were already uncovered, and I carried them silently, the weight heavier each day. My pride was shattered, my heart broken, and my trust destroyed, but I stayed quiet because I knew if I exploded without preparation, I would be left with nothing but anger. The signs were no longer signs, they were proof. Clear, undeniable, unforgiving proof that my wife had given herself to my boss, and both of them had spit on my loyalty. I realized then that betrayal is worst when it comes from those closest to you, because it leaves you with nothing to hold on to. Both pillars in my life had crumbled, and all I could do was sit in the ruins, planning what to do with the truth now resting in my hands. After finding the messages and photos, I was no longer the same man. I walked through my days in silence, going to work, coming home, sitting in my chair, but inside me something was breaking piece by piece. I looked at my wife and could not see the woman I had built my life with. I looked at my boss and could not see the man I once respected. Everywhere I turned, the betrayal followed me. At night, I could not sleep. The words from those texts echoed in my head, the way she mocked me, the way he treated me like a fool. My chest burned, my stomach twisted, and my heart felt heavier than ever before. I sat alone many nights, replaying the sacrifices I had made, all the hours I had worked, all the times I put my own needs aside just to provide. I thought of the promises I had kept, the loyalty I had never broken, the trust I had given freely. And I realized all of it had been wasted on two people who had no respect for me. The pain became unbearable, and I knew I had reached my breaking point. It was not just the betrayal of love, it was the betrayal of respect, of dignity, of everything I stood for as a man. I realized I had been working for a man who was sleeping with my wife. Every dollar I earned under him felt dirty. Every order I followed from him felt like a joke. The marriage I had defended, the vows I had honored, were nothing but lies she had broken in secret. I could no longer carry it quietly, because silence meant I was their fool. If I stayed quiet, they would win. If I pretended not to know, they would continue to laugh at me behind closed doors. My pride would be gone forever, and I would live the rest of my days as the man who knew but never acted. That thought was worse than the betrayal itself. I knew then that I had to strike back, not with shouting, not with fists, but with truth. The same way they humiliated me with lies, I would destroy them with facts. Revenge would not heal my heart, but it would free me. It would show them that I was not the weak man they believed I was. That night, sitting alone in the dark, I told myself that enough was enough. I would no longer sit quietly while they mocked me. I would no longer carry their secret for them. I would use it, and I would end them both. That decision was the breaking point. It was the line I crossed from being their victim to being the man who would bring their world crashing down. Once I decided I would no longer stay silent, I knew I had to prepare carefully. Rage would not be enough. If I acted too soon, they would deny it, twist it, and make me look like a bitter old man inventing stories. I needed proof organized, clear, and undeniable. So every night, when the house was quiet, I went through the evidence I had already collected. I scrolled through the screenshots I saved, reading each message again, even though it tore me apart. I sorted them by date, making a timeline that showed exactly when the betrayal began and how long it lasted. I pulled out the photos, the ones of her dressed up for him, the ones that showed their meetings, and I put them in order. I checked call logs and matched them to the nights she told me she was out with friends or busy with errands. Each detail added another nail in the coffin of their lies. I created a folder, one that contained everything, and I locked it where only I could reach it. I knew then that I was no longer carrying just heartbreak. I was carrying a weapon. The folder was not just proof for me. It was proof strong enough to crush both of them. I decided that revenge had to be precise. If I confronted her directly, she would cry and deny it. If I confronted him, he would use his power as my boss to silence me. But if I exposed them to the one person who deserved the truth as much as I did, their entire world would collapse. His wife. She had been living in the same lies I had. She trusted him as I once trusted her. She believed she had a faithful husband, just as I once believed I had a loyal wife. She did not deserve to live in ignorance, raising a glass with a man who betrayed her behind her back. If anyone needed to see what I had seen, it was her. So my preparation was not just for me. It was for her too. I made copies of everything, printing some, keeping others on a drive. I told no one, not even my closest friends, because this was not a story for gossip. This was a weapon to be used at the right time. Every day I went to work, I looked at my boss, knowing I held the power to destroy him. Every night I sat across from my wife, listening to her excuses, knowing she had no idea the ground beneath her feet was already crumbling. The preparation gave me calm. It reminded me I was no longer helpless. Each file, each screenshot, each photo was a piece of armor around my pride, protecting me from collapsing again. I decided to wait for the right moment, not rushing, not announcing my plan. When the strike came, it would be quiet, and it would be final. The more I prepared, the more I realized that I was standing at a crossroads. I could choose to stay quiet, bury the truth, and live out my remaining years carrying shame that did not belong to me. Or I could choose to act and reclaim the dignity they tried to strip away. Silence would have been easier in the short term. I could have ignored the messages, pretended not to know, and continued my life as if nothing had happened. But that life would have been a prison. Every time I looked at her, I would remember what she had done. Every time I looked at him, I would remember how he had used me. I would grow bitter, resentful, and empty. That was not a life worth living. The decision came slowly, but once it formed, it grew stronger every day until it became unshakable. I decided I would not confront them face to face. Confrontation would give them the chance to twist the truth. She would cry, accuse me of being paranoid, say I misunderstood. He would laugh, use his position to make me look unstable, claim the messages meant nothing, and push me aside. If I went directly to them, they would only protect themselves. But if I took the truth to someone else, someone who had the right to know, they would have no place to hide. His wife became the center of my decision. She was like me, living blind to a betrayal that touched her home. She had no idea that the man she loved had been crawling into my life where he had no right to be. She deserved to know the truth. Just as my wife had made me a fool, her husband had made her a fool. I told myself that if I stayed quiet, I was betraying her too. Because silence would keep her in the dark, I could not carry that weight. The decision was clear. I would deliver the proof directly to her, not with noise, not with confrontation, but with cold precision. It would destroy their affair and take down their image of respectability in one move. My boss would lose the home he thought was secure. My wife would lose the mask she had worn so easily. They would face each other not in secret passion, but in public disgrace. I felt no joy in planning their destruction, but I felt relief. It was not about revenge for pleasure, it was about justice. They had betrayed me together, so I would end them together. The decision gave me strength. I carried myself differently, knowing I was no longer powerless. They still thought they were in control, still thought I was blind, but the truth was already prepared, waiting for me to pull the trigger. I decided that when the moment came, I would not explain, I would not argue, I would simply deliver the evidence to his wife and let the truth burn them down. The night I chose to deliver the truth was quiet, almost ordinary, which made it perfect. They were comfortable, thinking their secret was safe, thinking I was blind, thinking I was too weak to act. My wife sat on the couch, her phone in her hand, probably sending another message she believed I would never see. My boss had left work earlier that day, patting me on the back like nothing was wrong, like he still held the respect I once gave him. But I no longer looked at him with loyalty. I looked at him with the cold knowledge that his time was running out. I had everything ready. The folder was complete. Inside it were the screenshots of their messages, the call logs that showed their constant communication, the photos that proved where they had been when they lied to me, the timelines that exposed every excuse. I copied it all into a package, both digital and printed, because I wanted no chance of denial. If they tried to delete, I had backup. If they tried to argue, the words and images would still be there. I did not send it in anger. I did not write long explanations or accusations. I simply placed the proof in a plain envelope and attached the same files to an email. It was not my words that mattered. It was their own words that condemned them. That evening, while my wife prepared herself for another night of lies, I pressed send. The email went straight to the boss's wife, containing every piece of evidence I had gathered. At the same time, I mailed the printed folder to her house so she would have the physical copy as well. I said nothing else. No message, no story, no excuses. Just the truth laid bare for her eyes. The silence after sending felt heavier than any shouting could have been. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding but steady. For months, I had carried the burden alone, but now I had passed it to the one who deserved to know. In that moment, I felt free. The house was quiet, my wife unaware that her destruction had already begun. I imagined her husband coming home, confident as always, only to be greeted by a storm he could not control. I imagined his wife opening the folder, her hands trembling as she read the messages, her heart breaking as she realized the man she trusted had betrayed her as deeply as I had been betrayed. I imagined the confrontation, the shock, the fury, the collapse of the life they had built on lies. My wife would feel the weight soon enough, because once the truth reached his home, it would spill into mine. I knew the fallout was coming, and I did not fear it. I had chosen my strike carefully, and now it was done. I looked at my phone one last time, saw the message marked as sent, and placed it down with calm. For the first time in months, I felt in control again. The delivery was complete, and there was no turning back. The fallout began faster than I expected. The very next day at work, the air was heavy. People whispered in the halls, eyes turned toward my boss with looks of disgust, and the confidence he once carried was gone. His wife had received the folder, and she did not stay quiet. She came to his office, not in private but in front of others, her voice sharp, her anger clear. She threw the papers at him, demanding answers, demanding truth, and he had none. The man who once spoke with authority and control stood shaking, his face pale, his words stumbling. I watched from my desk as his world collapsed, each whisper, each stare cutting him down further. He tried to call me into his office later, but I ignored him. He had nothing left to say that could change what I had done. At home, the storm reached me too. My wife came rushing in, her face red, her voice trembling, holding her phone with messages from his wife that had been forwarded to her. She begged, she cried, but her tears were not for me. They were for herself, for the life of lies that had been ripped apart. She tried to explain, but there was no explanation strong enough to erase the words she had written with her own hands. Family heard about it within hours. Calls came in, voices full of shock and disappointment. Friends who once smiled at her turned cold. Relatives who once praised her turned silent. The betrayal was no longer just mine to carry. It was public, spread through both families, leaving her exposed in a way she had never imagined. My boss's home fell apart just as quickly. His wife threw him out, his children refused to look at him, and his neighbors whispered about him in the streets. At work, he became a ghost. The man who once stood tall in meetings now sat slumped, his words carrying no weight, his presence unwelcome. His reputation collapsed, not because I shouted, not because I fought, but because his own actions had been shown to the one person who mattered most. For my wife, the collapse was even harder. She tried to cling to me, tried to remind me of years past, but the weight of what she had done was too heavy. I looked at her and saw only the messages, the photos, the betrayal. She no longer had the power to humiliate me, because she had humiliated herself in front of everyone. She lost her place in the family, she lost her respect in the community, and she lost me. Within days, both of them stood in ruins, their affair destroyed, their reputations gone. The fallout was not loud for me. I did not scream or celebrate. I simply watched, calm, as the truth I had carried quietly burned through their lives like fire. They betrayed me together, and now they fell together. The ruin spread wide and fast, and it left nothing of their false pride standing. My boss, once a man everyone respected, could not walk into a room without whispers following him. People at work who once looked up to him now turned their backs, shaking their heads in disappointment. Clients questioned his leadership, employees avoided his orders, and rumors about his affair with my wife spread beyond the company walls. His career, the very thing he valued above all, was damaged beyond repair. Meetings were quieter, projects delayed, and his name no longer carried the weight it once did. At home, his wife refused to forgive him. She threw his clothes out, locked the doors, and made it clear he was no longer welcome. His children wanted nothing to do with him, ashamed of what he had done, ashamed of how he had betrayed their mother. The life he once controlled, the image he once protected, all collapsed because of his own weakness. My wife's ruin was just as severe. Her family turned cold, refusing to take her calls, refusing to welcome her into their homes. The same relatives who once praised her as a loyal wife now called her a disgrace. Friends who once admired her for living a good life whispered behind her back, some even laughing at her downfall. In public, people looked at her differently. Her reputation was gone, her dignity erased, and her face carried shame wherever she went. Inside our home, the silence grew heavy. She tried to cling to me, to remind me of the years we had shared, but those years were already poisoned by the betrayal she had chosen. I looked at her and felt nothing but emptiness. Every time I saw her, I remembered the words she had written to him, the photos she had sent, the way she mocked me in secret. There was no way to rebuild what she had destroyed. She lost her marriage, just as he lost his home. Together they had built their betrayal, and together they lost everything. They no longer had the respect of family, friends, or community. They no longer had the trust of the people who once believed in them. They had destroyed their own lives, and I was only the one who revealed the truth. Watching their ruin did not bring me joy, but it brought me peace. I knew then that I had done the right thing. They had betrayed me together, and now they stood disgraced together. When everything was finally exposed, I felt a kind of silence inside me that I had not felt in months. It was not the silence of fear, not the silence of humiliation, but the silence of peace. I had carried their secret alone for so long, walking each day with the heavy weight of betrayal on my back. I had stayed quiet, watching my wife lie to my face, watching my boss act like a man of honor while he destroyed my home in secret. For months, I had lived as if I were blind, but I was never blind. I was patient. When I sent the proof to his wife, I knew it would burn everything they had built on lies. And it did. The fallout left them broken, their reputations, their families, their image of respectability. Everything was gone. My wife lost her marriage. My boss lost his home. Both of them lost the respect they once demanded from everyone else. And me? I walked away with my dignity intact. I did not raise my voice. I did not fight. I did not strike with anger. I struck with truth, and truth destroyed them more completely than any rage ever could. I continued at my job for a while, but I no longer looked at my boss the same way. He was smaller now, not a leader, not a mentor, but a man revealed for what he truly was, weak, selfish, and pitiful. I pitied him more than I hated him. As for my wife, there was nothing left to rebuild. I gave her years of loyalty, and she traded it for cheap lies. She destroyed our marriage with her choices, and I let her sit in the ruins she created. People often think justice comes with noise, with shouting, with revenge that is loud and violent. But my justice was quiet. It came in the form of exposure. I did not need to create lies. I only showed the truth they had written themselves. That was enough to end them. My final thought is simple. They betrayed me together, so I ended them together. I walked away with nothing left to hide, nothing left to prove. They were left with shame, and I was left with freedom.